At the beginning of the pandemic, I passed the Meals Act to let districts provide universal meals in the hope of preventing a massive hunger crisis. It worked. Over 30 million kids are now estimated to receive school meals.
Ladies and gentlemen, everyone's favorite Somalian House Representative Ilhan Omar has just been caught promoting a $250 million fraud ring, and no, I'm not kidding. You see, during the recent pandemic, a Minnesota-based organization called Feeding Our Future had claimed that it was serving food to starving children. But, as it would turn out, they were lying about all of it, defrauding American taxpayers to the tune of $250 million. And so it's this organization, Feeding Our Future, that Ilhan Omar was caught promoting. Now, we're going to get into Ilhan Omar's role in all of this soon, but first, take a look at this report.
Another suspect is behind bars tonight, facing federal charges in the $250 million Feeding Our Future fraud scheme. The suspect captured at the airport before boarding a flight to Dubai.
Julie, we told you last week how the federal raid of a St. Paul nonprofit signaled that the U.S. Attorney's Office is not done charging new suspects in this case. Today, they said that as soon as news of that raid broke, Hibo Dar booked an urgent international flight.
Hibo Dar is now the 71st person to be charged in the $250 million Feeding Our Future pandemic meal fraud case. Court records show she claimed to serve 1 million meals to children out of this office in a business center on East Hennepin Avenue and collected $2.4 million in taxpayer money. But federal investigators believe her meal site, Northside Wellness, was fake and that she only spent less than $2,000 on food. According to the criminal complaint, Dar's case included all the telltale signs of the sprawling fraud. She wrote checks to Hadith Ahmed, a Feeding Our Future employee who's already pleaded guilty and says checks like those were bribes. There are emails Dar sent to Amy Bach, the former executive director of Feeding Our Future, convicted by a jury this year, including meal count sheets the FBI says are fake. In those meal counts, the complaint says that by April 2021, Dar claimed to be serving about 40,000 meals to children every week. After Bach was convicted, it was unclear whether the feds intended to charge any additional suspects in the case. But late last week, the FBI raided a St. Paul nonprofit, New Vision Foundation, signaling they weren't finished. As news of that raid spread, prosecutors say Dar booked a flight to Dubai, set to leave 3 days later. The FBI arrested her at the airport before she could board. In court, the prosecutor said they informed Dar in April that she was one of the new targets of their investigation. They told the judge they believe she tried to escape, thinking charges are coming soon.
Now in court, Dar's lawyer said that she was just traveling to visit her sick mother. But then she got caught in a lie, claiming that she hadn't traveled overseas since 2022. The prosecutors then pulled out her passport right in the courtroom and showed that she had been traveling regularly since then to several countries. She is now in the Sherburne County Jail.
3 more suspects in the Feeding Our Future fraud case made their first court appearances this afternoon. In the meantime, we've been tracking what happened to some of the money they received, including political donations.
There's no evidence that the politicians knew the money was coming from people involved with alleged fraud, but we wanted to check how much money they received and whether they've returned it.
Between March 2020 and now, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar received 3 campaign donations totaling $7,400 from 3 suspects now charged in the $250 million Feeding Our Future federal meal fraud. Most of the money came from owners of Safari Restaurant.
So folks, there you have it. 70 people have now been indicted that were involved in this fraud ring, almost all of which were Somalian immigrants. Now, before we move on, can we just quickly acknowledge how absolutely evil it is to lie about feeding starving children in an effort to steal taxpayer money? And hey, as the reporter said, this is the nation's single largest pandemic-era fraud case, absolutely reprehensible. But okay, check this out. One of Feeding Our Future's key locations at which they committed fraud was an establishment called Safari Restaurant. In fact, during the pandemic, Safari Restaurant alone claimed to have fed over 3.9 million individual children, despite there only being 1.3 million children in the entire state of Minnesota. This is actually one of the ways that this entire fraud ring was actually exposed. Not only were these people evil, but they were also incredibly stupid. And folks, speaking of stupid, this is where Ilhan Omar comes in. Take a look at this.
ciyaalkeena yaryar ilaa iyo number la eg 20 milyan oo ciyaal iskuuley ah oo u fududeynayo in waqtigaanay pandemic aan ku jirno oo dhalinyarada iskoolka aynan joogin oo guryahooda ay joogaan aynan gaajoonin oo familkoodi wili ay fursad u helaan safari in ay tahay meelaha sayti oo diyaarinayo cunto maalin kasto dhalinyarada ciyaalkii iyo familkiisanin iyagoo aan taakulayn kaleeta helaynin in aynan ka walwalin ciyaalkooda yaryar sidii ay qado ku siin lahaayeen waa muhiim marka waxaan u mahadcelinayaa safariyo kaleeta iyo dadka badan oo maalin ilaahay keeno fursad u qaata in ay u volunteer gareeyaan oo ay taakuleeyaan familiyaalka.
Yeah, that was Congresswoman Ilhan Omar promoting the very establishment that worked with Feeding Our Future to defraud American taxpayers out of hundreds of millions of dollars. But you know what? This entire situation gets even worse than that. You see, the only reason that the fraudulent organization Feeding Our Future was able to receive any of this taxpayer money in the first place is because of a piece of legislation called the Meals Act, which allocated money from the federal government towards humanitarian groups just like Feeding Our Future. And now, folks, can you guess who drafted and proposed the Meals Act? That's right, Ilhan Omar.
At the beginning of the pandemic, I passed the Meals Act to let districts provide universal meals in the hope of preventing a massive hunger crisis. It worked. Over 30 million kids are now estimated to receive school meals. In August 2020, when the waivers were on the verge of expiring, Representative Bingley and I joined 119 of our colleagues in sending a letter to the Secretary of Agriculture urging him to extend the school meal waivers. Throughout the pandemic, I sent 3 letters and worked tirelessly to ensure every child can eat. Though we were able to secure these critical waiver extensions, the uncertainty caused millions of families and school administrators to panic and stress. Now, we find ourselves in a familiar place where at the end of this month, in just 15 days, millions of children are again at risk of going hungry as school meal waivers are set to expire. Let me be clear. We cannot let these life-saving waivers lapse as the pandemic rages on. I'm working with the Education Committee and leadership to ensure that our children are continuing to be fed. But we can't stop there. We need permanent solutions. As a former community nutrition educator, childhood hunger is an issue I know way too well. That's why one of the first bills I introduced after I was sworn in was the Universal School Meals Program Act with Senator Sanders and Gillibrand. My bill would provide free breakfast, lunch, and dinner to every student and eliminate school meal debt. No child in the wealthiest country in the world should experience food insecurity. We here in the United States must lead to end child hunger here at home and must continue to lead to stop this global hunger crisis. In Somalia, 29% of children are experiencing acute malnutrition. About 7 million livestock in Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia have died since last fall due to widespread drought. This food crisis in the Horn of Africa and all parts of the globe will only get worse unless we take steps to stop this catastrophe from taking hold.
Seriously, you can't make this stuff up. She herself proposed the legislation that allowed for this fraudulent charity to receive money from the federal government. Then, she personally promoted the fraudulent charity as it was stealing hundreds of millions of dollars from American taxpayers. But you know what? It gets even worse. You see, according to multiple reports, several of these indicted Somalian immigrants that were involved in this fraud ring are actually campaign donors to Ilhan Omar. which would mean that not only did she propose the legislation that allowed for all of this to happen, and not only did she personally promote the fraud as it was happening, but she also financially benefited from the entire situation. And you want to know something? As if this entire situation isn't infuriating enough, guess what? Ilhan Omar isn't even being prosecuted. Despite all of this information, the evidence wasn't deemed concrete enough. I think it's probably best if we don't allow criminal immigrant gangs from Somalia to defraud American taxpayers or to allow their beneficiaries like Ilhan Omar to serve in Congress. In fact, I think that all of that is probably not good for America. I guess as things stand right now, all we can really hope for is that Congresswoman Ilhan Omar gets voted out of her own district. Because I'll tell you what, folks, if we really want to make America great again, we've got to get these traitors out of our government.
I want to follow up with something else because we recently had one of your Republican colleagues, Brandon Gill, on the show. He said that America would be better off if you were arrested and deported. He also said that there was audio of you advising what he said or illegal immigrants here from Somalia on how to evade ICE detection. I want you to respond to that.
Yeah, I mean, again, these are people who have really stopped caring about our institutions, really stopped caring about our Constitution. We know that folks who are here, whether they are documented or undocumented, we know whether you are a permanent resident or you are a citizen, you have constitutional rights. And it is really important for people to know those rights. I know that it is red meat for his base that are xenophobic and racist to say to them that I am going to find a way to arrest and deport a member of Congress who he thinks is doing something wrong when I am doing the right thing in trying to make sure everybody that is within my constituency has the resources and the information that they need.
And she was democratically elected by members, by the people in her district.
Yes, of course. But just to follow up very quickly, just be clear, you're not calling his base xenophobic and racist, right?
Well, I mean, he is feeding to something. He has a petition out. He's getting donations. That's what this is all about. He knows he can't deport me. There is no grounds for my arrest. So this information is only being put out there by him for a reason, and that reason is because he has a base that feeds off of that.
That's all for today. Thank you. If you want global news to keep you up to date on any new developments, please subscribe our channel and forward our content with your friends on social media and email. Thank you very much for keep supporting me. Stay safe, be blessed. Namaste.
Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.